1601 Glider Report by Sarah Dea. Some requirements were that the glider must be smaller than 16 inches in length and width, must fit the definition of being a glider, which is having wings, wingspan, tip cord, root cord, fuselage, tail, etc. It must be primarily made of balsa wood. The vehicle must fly straight. The vehicle must stay intact throughout the flight and landing, and it must fly at least 20 feet. So the key components of my glider design are dihedral wings, winglets, tapered wings, and a conventional glider tail. For the wings, I decided to have them in a dihedral 3 to 4 degree position because it would make the glider more stable. The dihedral keeps the glider from rolling as much from outside forces. I decided to have the winglets on the wings because winglets decrease drag. I was unsure on my aspect ratio because on one hand, a larger aspect ratio is better, but it causes the wings to be flimsier. So I decided to have a smaller aspect ratio with winglets, which essentially makes the wing act like it has a larger aspect ratio when they aren't. So I created the effect of having less drag while also having stronger wings. Then I decided to have tapered wings, specifically tapered leading edge with a straight trailing edge. I knew that straight wings have the most lift, so they are the obvious choice, but I felt like it would be too boring. Also, wings with tapered trailing edges reduce drag, there's also more yaw stability. And unlike a completely straight wing, there's more weight distributed towards the fuselage, so it has a better center of gravity. Finally, for the tail design, I had 3 possible options. I was researching the conventional tail, T-tail, and H-tail. I decided on the conventional tail because it is the lightest of the 3 and the easiest to build. I wanted the lightest possible tail because I knew that the center of gravity had to be in front of the center of lift, so it would be best for the tail to be light. Some alternatives I was considering were elliptical wings, losing the dihedral, and different tail options. Elliptical wings are technically the best type of wing. They have the least drag and the most lift, so they are the most optimal. However, I decided not to go with them because they are extremely difficult to create, and I didn't trust myself on the laser cutter not to mess them up and ruin my balsa wood. Not having the dihedral would have made things easier and more convenient. However, I felt that a dihedral wing would give my glider a tremendous advantage, so I decided to stick with it. So the glider was balanced based on pure estimation. The entire time, I was basically using my fingers to figure out where the center of mass of the glider was, and I was going off of that. I knew generally where I wanted the wings to be placed and got the center of gravity of the glider, but didn't have any actual weight measurements. In the end, the center of gravity was behind the quarter cord of the wing, so I had to add weight to the nose of the glider to get the center at the quarter cord. So this is the weight created by the Play-Doh. And this was, so beforehand, the center of mass was like around here, but with the Play-Doh, it's around here, which is the most optimal. So to find the lift and drag coefficients, I first found the mass of the glider. I found the surface area on one side of the wing, found the wingspan, recorded 4 test flights, and measured the distance flown and average time, calculated the average velocity of the flights, then calculated the lift coefficient, the induced drag coefficient, and the total drag coefficient. So here are the measured items. So I got 66 grams. This is the surface area of one side of the wingspan, the average displacement, which I found through some videos, the average time of flight, the velocity, and these are my calculations, which I used through these equations. So first I tested my glider without the winglets, and it flew, but I didn't think it flew very far. Then I added winglets and saw a huge improvement in the flight. So for this, I was basically using cardboard for my first iteration. I noticed that my vertical and horizontal stabilizers seemed generally fairly large, and to compensate that weight, I had to add additional weight to the nose of the glider. Because of these weights, it increased the force of gravity on the glider, so it wasn't getting as much comparable lift. So I made the vertical and horizontal stabilizers smaller. So here, you can't really see it, but this is what the horizontal and vertical stabilizers looked like beforehand, and this was after I changed it. Finally, as I was building my final design, which is this, I thought of placing the wings within the fuselage rather than on the outside. So I created slits for the wings to fit into the fuselage. Generally, it made the wings much more stable and ensured that they would stay in place. Also, it made it easier to add that dihedral form into them. So this is my 5x5. This is my final design in a 16 by 16 box. This is like a rough general average, but my wingspan was 15.5 centimeters, which is, I'd say that's pretty correct if this is a 16 box. And then my fuselage is 15 inches. So I think this is pretty accurate. These are the videos of some of my designs. So this was the first iteration, which I made using cardboard. Actually did pretty well. Then this is the second one. This is like my final design. This is before we tested it though. This is before like the actual flight on Tuesday. And this was after our final flight, and this was when I was like taking the velocity and measuring that stuff. So I think from these two, the glider looks very promising, and then in the end, it just kind of like fell off. In conclusion, my glider is a large dihedral tapered wing, conventional tail glider with winglets. It passed the test and flew 20 feet, but I think it could have gone a lot farther. It definitely had a lot of potential. If I had the ability to change things, I would have made the glider smaller, more accurately measured the center of gravity beforehand, and in general, just figure out how to throw the glider better. I noticed when we were doing the actual test flights that a lot of the gliders that went very far were much smaller than mine, which that was because like it was much lighter. And I also wish that I more accurately measured the center of gravity so I wouldn't have to put additional like Play-Doh onto the glider that added to more weight. So then it could have flown a lot farther. And these are my citations. Thank you.